There's a funny and scary article from Eric Levitz in New York Magazine, and he's pointing out something that we've been reporting on piecemeal for several months, which is that Donald Trump seems to become enraged when there is accurate reporting about the impact of the legislation he wants passed. So forget about low information voters who are falling for this stuff. We have maybe our lowest ever information president. And the main point is Donald Trump doesn't know what his policies are going to do or what his proposals are going to do. He signs off on stuff, maybe because someone 5 minutes prior told him it was going to be a good idea. Later, he starts seeing reporting about what the impact of his policies would be, and he ends up furious, usually with someone, I guess whoever suggested to him these ideas in the first place. So I'll give you some examples, right? The Obamacare repeal promise that he and many other Republicans made during the campaign, that turned into the Republicans have proposed a mean bill. Well, yeah. And Donald Trump ended up furious with the accurate coverage of what would happen to people's health care if Trump Care, I believe at the time 1.0, was enacted and Obamacare repealed. Trump campaigned on, I'm going to have a tax plan that's going to be really, really great for the middle class. He publishes the tax plan, and then the analyses accurately say, hold on a second, this is a major giveaway for the richest of all Americans. This is really going to do nothing for the middle class. It'll be great for people with gigantic estates. Accurate coverage, Trump furious about how the coverage is going because he's just learning what the impact of his policy is going to be. Another example from the tax proposal, Trump was fully on board with this idea of repealing the deductibility of state and local taxes at the federal level. Everybody who has some economic sense flips out and tells Trump, you know, that's terrible for the middle class. And now Trump is furious and he has come out against the elimination of that tax deductibility for the state and local tax. And an important discussion that we have to have when we talk about this is it's very easy, and I know I've talked about, is Trump suffering from the early stages of dementia? Does Trump have Alzheimer's? Does Trump have limited cognition or limited ability to read? It becomes sort of an easy out in a way because it excuses Donald Trump being genuinely clueless and in over his head. And it excuses those who voted for Donald Trump, right? Because if we just write off the total lack of connection to the real world impact of Donald Trump's policies, if we say it's not because he's a genuinely selfish and bad guy, it's not because he's in way over his head, if we say it's dementia or Alzheimer's, we're excusing those who voted for Donald Trump, and we shouldn't be doing that. They don't deserve to be excused for having put this guy in the Oval Office. And I don't know the reality of the possible diagnoses of Donald Trump, whether it is limited literacy or Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever the case may be. But the problem here is under the understanding that Donald Trump is not currently senile, he is clueless on policy and appears to genuinely not be a good person. There's a conversation I saw from an interview recently that Donald Trump did with Forbes's Randall Lane. And it's an example of this total lack of understanding that doesn't seem to be dementia or Alzheimer's. And the conversation that they had is one where Randall Lane said about Donald Trump's tax plan, so it's a massive tax cut, but then that runs against your pledge to not increase the deficit because you can't, you know? And Trump says, no, because a tax cut will spur growth. And Lane says, yes, that is true, and there is dynamic scoring. And Trump adds the growth will be so much that it'll be, and Lane interrupts and says, yeah, but history has shown that you can't just cut. It does spur growth, but it won't pay for itself. History has shown that. And Donald Trump says, well, history has also shown the opposite. I mean, you've had it both ways. It has shown both ways. So Donald Trump then tries to come up with an example of when tax cuts have been economically stimulative above and beyond the decreased revenue. And he says, well, during Reagan, tremendous growth. And Lane accurately points out there was growth, but it ballooned the deficit. I want to think through an example here, because if you just put in 2 minutes of time into thinking about this idea, If you cut taxes for the rich, does it really spur enough growth to make up for the lost government revenue? Imagine an economy that is $10,000, okay? The total economy is $10,000. You want to cut the tax rate, let's say, from 40% to 30%, okay? So at a 40% tax rate in your $10,000 economy, that's $4,000 in tax revenue. If you cut the tax rate to 30%, you now have $3,000 in tax revenue. So your play is you'll cut the taxes, you'll lose $1,000 in tax revenue, but the economy will grow so much that you'll add more than $1,000 in tax revenue in the end. In order for that to happen with a 30% tax rate, to recover $1,000 in tax revenue, you need your economy to grow $3,300. So the break even is that the economic multiplier on the cut money needs to be 3.33. If you give that $1,000 in tax cuts to the rich, it is mostly going to be saved because they don't need that money and they are not going to put it back into the economy in a way that will have an economic multiplier of 3.33. It just won't work. If you give $1,000 to the rich, you're not going to grow your economy by $3,300. And the problem is that it's not just Trump who supports and believes this stuff. Lots of voters support and believe this stuff. They've all been bamboozled, and no one knows any better than the president. So I think that this is a very, very good piece that you should check out, and we're linking to it on YouTube because it points out that Donald Trump genuinely is furious when he finds out what his policies will do because he doesn't understand what they will do. There is one area where I disagree with this piece, which is that it seems to take the position that Trump has good intentions and he's just kind of an easily manipulated moron. I've been very clear. It's clear to me that Trump has a policy. His personal philosophy, his political philosophy, is one of self-aggrandizement and self-enrichment and greed, period. So while I think the piece is very well written and it points out Trump genuinely does become surprised when he reads about the impact of his policies, I don't think the guy has great intentions. I think his only goal is self-enrichment, self-aggrandizement, and patting himself on the back. And we've been seeing that in terms of this horrible hurricane recovery. So check out the article, think about this example, and let me know where I'm going wrong if I am. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. Today's program is sponsored in part by ZipRecruiter. If you are hiring, you need to know where to post your job to find the best candidates. ZipRecruiter makes it possible to post your job listing to over 100 job sites with just a single click. They will also use their technology to match the right applicants to your job better than anybody else, because unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter does not depend on candidates finding you. It will find candidates for your position. And in fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through their website within the first day. The back-end dashboard control panel makes it so you don't have to juggle emails or calls to your office. You can screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place. This is the smartest way to hire, and you can find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes for free. Because David Pakman Show listeners and viewers can post jobs on ZipRecruiter at no cost if you go to ziprecruiter.com/Pakman. That's ziprecruiter.com/PAKMAN. One more time, try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/PAKMAN.